We live. Ruben, your camera not on.
Okay, hold on. Let me try to sort that out. Let me sort that out right now. Let me sort that out right
Still hear me?
now. Yeah,
You still hear me right now?
yeah, I can hear you.
All right, cool.
Yeah, I can hear you. All right. Good evening, everyone, and welcome to the second edition of Wednesday Wellness Talk. I'm hearing an echo, Munch.
That's because it's on your end. You got if it's not in headphones or something.
All right, so we got to try to. Can you hear me?
Yeah,
All right, so we got to try to. Can you hear me? You still hear the echo?
yeah, I still hear the echo. See, when we did it earlier, it was somewhat else. So
All right. So please forgive us, audience. We're having some technical difficulties that we're going to try to work through. But today we're. Oh, I know what I need to do. All right, that should do it.
yeah,
Hello.
there we go.
All right. So yes, today we're here for our second Wellness Wednesday. We want to encourage you to make sure that this is Men's Health Month, and this is Men's Health Week. And what we're setting out to do is to make sure that we address the concerns from a mental health and a healthcare perspective regarding men. Last week we had a very nice talk with Munch, who's on here now, and also with Jonathan Spikes. And so that was a very good talk. This is going to be a continuation. We had a special guest, Eduardo Gillis, but I think that he had some technical difficulties and we could not keep him on right now. We'll see if we can get back to him a little bit later. But without further ado, we want to welcome you. We want to encourage you to bring your family members in and have this discussion with us. You can join us on if you're on our Facebook page, make sure that you share this information with any of your colleagues, your friends, your family, and invite them to participate in the discussion. You can leave your comments in the chat box, and we'll have someone share those comments with us, and hopefully we can address those comments. Last week we had a very telling discussion about just mental health and wellness and how to address some of the concerns that folks have when they're feeling depressed, when they're feeling anxious, or just feeling stressed out. For those of you who are just living your day-to-day life, you look at the gas prices now, almost $6 a gallon. We look at how rent and mortgage prices are going up to the point to where they're almost doubling and in some cases tripling. And now the feds are going to be raising the interest rates. We look at, so there's a housing shortage. There's affordable housing shortage where folks are really struggling with how they're going to just survive on a day-to-day basis. And then in addition to all of that, the prices of food, just to feed your family. So you have to make some very key decisions in terms of, how do I maneuver through this maze? And we have to be considerate of how these things are really affecting us directly. Some of us are going through some challenges, and we don't know how to deal with it. We were struggling with how to deal with some of the challenges that we're facing. So much I want you to talk about from your vantage point,
Hmm.
what is it like for you today dealing with, all that's going on in terms of the prices going high, up in almost every sector. in terms of just the responsibilities that you have, and how do you maintain? Talk to us about that.
For me, it's a big mindset situation. You get what I'm saying? You can hear me? Okay, I just wanted to make sure. So for
Yeah.
me, it's a big mindset thing, right? Um, you can look at this as a opportunity, or you can look at it as a threat. And so I choose to look at it as an opportunity. When they talk about stocks and it's a bear market and things like that, I think a lot of times our mindset is, oh, we in a recession, we ain't gonna have as much money. But that's if you think in short term. If you think in long term, and investing, it's a little bit better. And I think it starts with your mindset. Um, that's the main thing. My thing is right now is like no matter what happens in this recession, um, I'm gonna be all right. It's me staying positive throughout the whole thing. And I think when I think negative, when you think negative, negative things happen. So for me, it's just about staying positive. For me, when I look at all the things that's going around, it is concerning with the shootings and other things that's happening, the recession that's happening, the gas prices going up. I really do want to, I want to buy a house one day. Gas prices is going up, but I'm not. I just stay the course and think positive about it for the most part.
So, you just brought up a number of issues, just like I did, regarding some of the things that we're dealing with. And so, to me, um, I think that folks are really looking for some sort of answers to some of the challenges that we face on a daily basis. And so, when we're talking about, especially in marginalized communities, where you have, listen, let me tell you, one of the greatest fears I had as a father, and I know you're not a father yet, but as a
Mm-hmm.
father, one of the greatest fears that I had was not being able to support my family.
Mm.
And I know some folks, some men, as a result of having that same fear, some men choose the easy way out, and they leave their families, and they leave their families to fend for themselves.
Mm-hmm.
But that was never an answer for me. I wanted to make sure I stayed with my family. If we suffer together. But in times like this, I wonder, what can you share to that brother, or what can you share with that sister
Yeah.
when they're feeling like overwhelmed, and they're at their wits' end, and they just don't know what to do. What can you share with them to make them want to stick in there and hang in there, and be able to deal with some of the challenges that they're dealing with on a daily basis?
It's ironic that you brought that up because my dad had a food truck business at the same time, and the recession hit, and a lot changed. You know,
Mm.
um, and I still say my little brother still has some resentment towards that situation, but um, it was a time where, like you said, having to provide, and my old boy kind of like, or my father, he kind of like slipped up on that a bit. He didn't really mention it to us. He just tried to make it happen. And looking back on it, I think about like my father's like mental health issues. He never talked about it. He never acknowledged it as him having a mental health issue. We never had those discussions. But the older I get, I kind of like think of that, and it's one of those things like I said, like going through it. I was in college at the last time we had a recession, and it was like my mom. I never forget my mom calling me and saying, "Hey, I know we told you to go up there and don't think about the money, but we can't help you."
Right.
And so I'm way in Arizona, and they telling me they can't help me. So it
Right.
just it's fight or flight at that point, and I was to an extent okay. Um, and I just was like, you know what? I just had to keep a positive mindset. That was one of the reasons I actually came home too, because I just felt like my brother was gonna go to the streets. Like that was like a big concern to me. You know what I mean? Like, eviction notices was on the door, all that, like the light bill wasn't being paid, all these different things, and me being the way I am, and the way I knew my little brother to be, I just always felt like, man, he was gonna turn to the streets. So I came home like kind of prematurely to so he wouldn't could be in the streets, and that's a real concern, you know, for a big brother, you know what I mean? Because our natural how you say it's like for men in general, we just want to be providers and we want to be there, and when that's you know, and when we feel like we can't do it, we gonna go to do things that we probably shouldn't do, you know. So that's what I the first thing that came to my mind when you said that was like, yeah, I remember when that time hit. It was not a nice time. You know what I mean? I was about to sign the dotted line on the car, and I got a call from one of my good friends. He was like, "Yo, shit getting real," you know. And I came home, you know. I came home, and you know, it changed the family dynamic between me, my father, and my little brother a lot. You know what I'm saying? When that happened, and you know, my thing is that
How did it change it?
because I can't really say, so to speak, why. Um, but
No, how did it change
how
it?
did it
What would
change?
how? Yeah, how did it change? Not
Um,
why.
how did it change? Like, so like it was the respect factor. The biggest thing was the
Well,
respect factor. Like, respect was lost. You get what I'm saying? Um, yeah, the respect factor was lost. And then
you
like
know, it's funny that you said that. I want to stop right there because I hadn't even thought about the respect part of it during this time as we're dealing with some of these challenges as people are losing their jobs, homes, you know, and
mhm,
finding it difficult to maintain. I never even thought about internally within a family system how that must play out for family members.
yeah,
So if you're always looking at this person as the provider and know they're not longer functioning in that role, then that dynamics, as you just mentioned, changed a little bit, huh?
yeah, and it you know, for me, me and him had friction since I was younger. I didn't really
Mhm.
take that approach. I just kind of looked at it like, you know, I was older, a little bit more mature, and I just looked at it as the factor of like, you know, he doing the best he can given that he was an entrepreneur. You know what I'm saying?
Right.
At the time. So I didn't quite, you know, I understood he was an entrepreneur, but I didn't understand the dynamics of what Wall was going on in his mind. And I just always chopped it up to maybe he like later that like now that I'm older, I just always like maybe he was just going through something, you know.
So, you know, I'm glad that you mentioned that because I want to say this. I don't want to dwell too much on the negative. But
Yeah.
what I want to do is I want to say that, you know, you guys managed to um, um, you managed to really overcome some of these obstacles. And
Yeah.
even though there are some real experiences and real emotions that came about as a result of the challenges that you faced in your family, you were able to overcome them. So even though, you know, that's one of the things I want to talk about. You know, how do we enter to that path of wellness when we have a family member that may be struggling with a mental issue, and maybe a family member struggling with depression, and you know this family member is not as active or not as productive as they once were because they're dealing with their own challenges.
Mm-hmm.
And so one of the things I would, you know, love to suggest to folks is to make sure that you really find out about where you are from a mental health and wellness standpoint. And one of the ways that you can do that, I want to suggest that you all uh, uh, go back to www.mymentalhealthmiami.com. You see it there down at the bottom and take the survey. The survey that we have is it will give you a scorecard of where you are in terms of your the levels of depression, stress, anxiety, and when you get that scorecard, the scorecard will tell you if you're high in those areas. It will refer you to our care coordination team. The care coordination team numbers there listed on the screen: 786-433-8487, and that care coordination team will refer you to some service providers that will help you out. This is a part of the COVID mental health and wellness program. This program is really designed to just really do a mental health assessment of folks in Miami-Dade County uh, from the ages of 18 on up. Whoever you are in the county, if you're a resident of Miami-Dade County, you're welcome to participate in the program. And this program is really designed to make sure that we can link you to the appropriate services. So there are places that you can go to when you're struggling with family issues, when you're struggling with personal issues. There are places that you can go to that will be able to help you out. There's a system of care
I got a
network.
question.
Sure.
Not to cut you off, but I got a question. What do you do, like, for instance, with in certain situations, like how do you get them help when they don't know they need the help or they don't want the help? Because like I know in a few situations I've been in, like whether it was my father and other people, like they don't want the help. Whether it's pride, ego, or whatever, they just don't want the help. So how do you kind of like guide them to that to that place? You know what I'm saying? Like because a lot of people they look at it, you know, there was a stigma on that back in the day. You know, like
Yeah.
up until maybe about a couple years ago, there's been a stigma on mental health and going to therapy and that type of thing. And me personally, I know the times that in my experience, like we used to, when I was younger, they tried to do family therapy, and my father just like he went to a session to be supportive, but he was like, I don't need therapy. You know, he was adamant about that. You know what I mean? So how
Right.
do what would you suggest to kind of like get people to kind of like see? Because it's a lot for some people to be like, oh, I'm gonna go on this and I'm gonna do this survey. So how do you kind of like do you, I don't want to say do you do it for them, or do you call the care coordination team to get
So
more
let me
suggestions?
respond. That's great questions. All of the you asking, I got to answer all of those questions. So those are great questions. So first and foremost, the first thing that we have to recognize is that um, people who have been um, historically mistreated by systems, government systems, or medical systems, mental health entities, and that sort of thing, have a basic mistrust for those systems. So that's the first thing that we have to recognize. As a family therapist, as a practitioner myself, who's retired, one of the things I knew that when I went into the room and dealt with a family, there was always going to be a family member that was resistant to participating in therapy. And 9 times out of 10, they were seemed like they were forced to come. So they didn't come on their own will, but they felt that this was something they needed to do to keep the peace in the house or what have you. So the thing that is very important, Munch, and this is a great question that you asked about how do you encourage someone who's resistant, is to first of all, you have to figure out what that resistance is, right? And a lot of times what the resistance is, I'll say with men and especially black men, but men in general, uh, is that they feel that, you know, what gives you the right to try to tell me how to handle my family situation or how to, what I need to be doing differently or that sort of thing. What makes you the person that's going to be able to accomplish that? So when I get that as a therapist, as when I get that kind of impression from any of the consumers that I work with, one of the things I try to do is, really meet them right where they were, and that's essential. You got to meet people where they are. Um, you can't go in and be presenting yourself as if you're such a self-righteous person that you know what's best for the next person. You have to do what we call engage. You have to engage the family member that is resistant, and you have to hear and listen. And most importantly, you have to have a level of cultural competency. And I think that that's something that is not as prevalent as it should be. You have therapists who works with different cultures, but they may not always be aware of the cultural customs and norms and mores that these folks are from. And so when you see that resistance, as a therapist, if you're not familiar with it, it could be off-putting to the therapist who's not prepared. And so one of the things I would say to you, Munch, is this, is that whoever you're working with, whoever the person is that's coming in and working with the family or working with you individually has to be someone that really understands your culture, someone that is a good listener, and someone that is willing to allow whoever the patient is to speak their mind, speak their piece. That's a part of the engagement work that has to happen. There has to be a level of trust that's going to be established before those guards come down. What happens oftentimes is people are very guarded when they go to therapy. The only way that those guards come down is that dynamic, that relationship between you and the therapist, or the family and the therapist, has to be established to where folks feel more comfortable. They feel that they can be more transparent, and they feel that they're not, number one, feel that they're not being judged. So if you're feeling like I can go in here and I can have a conversation, and no matter what I say, no matter what I do, I'm not being judged by it. But what I am is someone's hearing me out, and they may offer some opportunity for me to do something different, but they're not forcing me to do it. It's not like a prescription where you have to do this, but that therapist has to skillfully manage in that situation to be able to join with that family, have some sort of cultural understanding, cultural and linguistic understanding, because language is important. The way that we speak, where we're from, and understand what they mean, what the meaning is. We use words, but sometimes words means different things to
Things that
different folks.
people, yeah.
Yeah, you know, you know it all too well. So once you get an understanding of that, I think that that's where, and you can connect with a practitioner that understands your culture, that treats you in a respectable manner, that's willing to hear you out, and then never present in a judgmental manner. I think that those things are key to having someone who is resistant uh, really begin to bring those guards down. So that was a great question that you asked, Munch, and those are the things that I think that we need to look for. The other thing I want to say to you is that you have to understand that you are empowered to really choose who you want to work with you. I want us to understand that you just don't have to accept, any practitioner. If you feel that this practitioner really doesn't understand or really doesn't get it, you can try to find someone that really works with you. Now, the difficulty is trying to find that person, but
I
if
went through
somebody else,
many. I went through
yeah,
many. I
tell us about that. Tell us about that experience for you.
I'm gonna be honest. I just realized like I was real snappy, and it was costing me a lot of relationships. Like I wasn't burning bridges. I'm still cool with a lot of the people that I was good with, but um, I felt like I was just rubbing people the wrong way, and and that's what led me to be like, I need help. And then my girl, of course, suggested it. She was like, maybe you need to, try to get this help. And so I went on the journey of like trying to go into one therapist. And I always say I spent a lot of money. And we talk
It's
about
been
a
a grip,
recession, without insurance, I
right?
spent a lot of money trying to go to these different. And even when I did have insurance, I think, out of network with one person, and then once I got the person in the network, it was a journey. You know what I'm saying, so to speak, and it was like I had to go through different people, not because I didn't like them. It's just that they had different ways of treating me, and they weren't. I would say if you didn't listen to what I said, something I said, like I was very adamant about like not wanting to be on pills, you know. Um, and I'm to this day I'm still adamant about being on pills. And like so the therapist that listened to me, and he was like, okay, all right. And I told him straight up, I just need somebody to be straight up with me and tell me what's wrong with me. I don't need y'all to kind of like play with my mind and to try to reconfigure how my mind works. I just need you to tell me straight up, straight no chaser, like a monk tune, what's going on. And that really worked for me. Some people don't know what may work for them, so they may go around trying because it's different people you can go to. You can go to a psychologist, a psychiatrist, or a therapist. And I literally went through all three of those before finding a therapist that knew exactly what a psychiatrist, I think, that just found that he just knew what I needed. And he went through CBT with me. And when he went through CBT with me, I was like, okay, this works. This is telling me that my mind is I need cognitively, I'm just not thinking right, you know. And it took like maybe like 5 therapists, honestly, to get to that point.
So you just said some things that reinforce what I said earlier.
Yeah,
So one of the things that you mentioned is that you wanted someone that you felt that respected you and
yeah,
respected your choices and your opinions,
yeah,
right? So you were adamant about not taking meds.
yeah,
You know, you didn't want to be prescribed meds right away, and you felt that the folks that were still pushing meds on you weren't hearing you.
yeah,
So they didn't hear you. You couldn't trust that they can understand you,
yeah.
right? Because you right out of the bat, right off the gate, you're not hearing what I'm telling you.
Mm-hmm.
That this is a major issue. This is a deal breaker for me, and you're steady, pushing me in this direction, right?
Mm-hmm.
So that's one of the things I'm speaking about engaging and joining. So if you're going to a therapist and they're not listening to what you're saying or hearing you, and then showing you some sort of respect by responding in a way that's consistent with what you're saying. Not saying that they need to, now they have to be careful. It's a delicate line because one of the things the therapist should not do is the therapist doesn't want to reinforce any of the negative behavior or negative things that are going on. So they need to set some clear boundaries. But at the same time, they need to be able to be respectful because one of the primary things that I learned from the folks that I've worked with is that they want to be heard, they want to be seen, they want to be respected.
Yeah.
When you talk about your father coming to the family therapy sessions and didn't want to be there, a lot of times, again, the head of the house feels almost violated that the family is saying, "Hey, we need to go see this person," as if whatever you're doing is not right. You can't fix it. We need to go outside someplace else to fix it.
And
Now,
he felt like it was isolated. You get
oh,
me?
really?
Like he felt like it was isolated. Like a lot of the problems was isolated. Like it didn't involve him. You know what I'm saying?
Okay.
And how it involved him. Like, like a lot of things, like if we in the household and it's let's just say verbal abuse, and it's not physical abuse, it's just verbal, you know what I mean? But to him, he was, because of how he was raised, he was like, oh, why y'all worried about that? You know what I'm saying? And it was like, oh, I forget how he said it to me, but he was just like, why does what I say affect you so much? You know?
Right.
And he didn't get it. And that's why it was a lot of resistance. And after a while, me and my mother, we talk about it often. He just stopped. He just stopped wanting to, you know what I'm saying, go through it. Like he just. I remember going. We went way down for people in Miami. We went way down the Coral Gables, out of the way. We seen this dude, nice dude. I didn't have a problem with him. Didn't think it was an issue. And I talked to him. I was young, so I was more receptive to it. And I wondered why we stopped, and that's something like me and my mom had a conversation about, and she was just like, your dad didn't feel like he didn't feel like it was all that was connected. He just felt like, it was isolated, if that makes sense.
Right.
And that's why I
No,
was
it makes
asking, like, how do you get that person to understand what you going through, how you feeling.
So again, just the same thing that you said about the therapist that they had to hear you, they had to respect you, they had to not be they had to be non-judgmental with you, and that's all a part of the engagement strategies and techniques. And then once they hear you and once they understand your position, you know, I'm going to share with you a secret that most therapists or some therapists won't let you know. Therapists don't give you the answers.
Mm-mm.
You already have the answers.
Mm-hmm.
A good therapist guides you to the information that you already have, right?
Mm-hmm.
And that's empowering to know that, listen, even though I'm struggling with an issue or struggling with things, I have the answers for myself. And the therapist really highlights the fact that you have these answers and they guide you to come to that conclusion. But when you have someone that's telling you, trying to teach you or tell you what you need to do differently, I think that can be off-putting to families, especially men. And so and just want to say again, this is Wellness Wednesday, the COVID Mental Health and Wellness Program. And we're talking about mental health and wellness this week. I'm on with James Munch, and this is our second edition. We had a guest earlier that was supposed to be on. Unfortunately, we had some technical difficulties and couldn't get him in. But Eduardo, maybe we'll get him in on another session. But today we're just talking about how these depression, anxiety, stress, how it's affecting us, but not only how it's affecting us. We want to talk about coping strategies and techniques that you can use. So one of the questions that James Munson asked just now was very good about how do you encourage someone who's resistant to therapy to participate in therapy, and that's what we were just going over. And that the key is really having someone who's cultural and linguistically competent, someone that listens to you, someone that hears you, someone that's non-judgmental. Because when you go in with your guards up, the moment that you see anything that rubs you the wrong way, then you're not committed to that session anymore. And so a good therapist knows that they really have to work to engage you, to even just get you to bring those guards down little by little until you can begin to do the work. And the work is not something that happens in one or two sessions. It's a journey sometimes. Sometimes it can be as little as 10 sessions. Sometimes it may take a little bit longer. But what we want to encourage you to do is that if you're feeling sad, if you're feeling down and out, if you're feeling angry, and there's a lot of anger, resentment, if you're feeling like, you just don't have the energy to get up and go, your shades are drawn, you don't want to go outside, you don't want to mingle, you don't want to do any of those things. I want to encourage you to go to the website that's down below, mymentalhealthmiami.com. Once you click on, go to the survey link up top, take the survey. We want you to know your score. The survey is going to, after you complete the survey, you'll get a score card. The scorecard will tell you where you fall in terms of your depression, anxiety, and stress, and levels of support. And then after you get that scorecard, you can contact our care coordination team. Our care coordination team will link you with entities that will provide support for you. Some of the services will be free. Some of them will be on a sliding scale fee based on your income. And the care coordination team's number is 786-433-8487. We also invite you to like and share this live and to type in Pound Wellness Wednesdays so that folks will know that you've been listening to the live broadcast of Wellness Wednesday. So now I want to move on to another subject. So you're the young professional. You're a millennial. Are
Technically,
you?
that's what they say. I'm a millennial.
All
I
right.
don't, I just be like, I'm living, man.
So you're a millennial, and millennials do things and see things a lot differently now. And I know that for ages, people have, used substances to deal with whatever issues that they may be having in terms of anxiety or stress or
Hmm.
even depression. And so right now, I mean, I can't go to a function without people, I mean, they had it loud. I mean,
Yeah,
the
loud.
marijuana, yeah, just fill up the room. I mean, I can't even go to a function,
I'm guilty. I'm guilty of it too. So, yeah.
So tell me, um, what is the purpose? What is it what's the reason that you are driven to do the marijuana or whatever other substance that you have? And is there certain trends among people in your age group regarding the use of substances, and just give us a world view of, you know, why this is happening. I have my own ideas, but I want to hear from
Um,
someone.
I know for me, I didn't realize it when I first started as self medicating. As I started to go on this mental health journey, and the having the cognitive behavioral therapy, then I started to realize, like, okay, I'm self medicating because I don't want to deal with the anxiety. So like in high anxiety situations, I just wanted to knock the edge off a little bit, calm down a little bit, so I wasn't so jittery, you know. And then when I was dealing with more so depression, it was me um, it was me just trying to like isolate myself in my thoughts and kind of like escape what I'm thinking, because the thoughts in my head, the depressive thoughts in my head, just got me racing. And it kind of like, I don't want to say had me spaced out, because I never been like super high to where I'm just spaced out and I'm not cognizant of like my awareness of like of my surroundings and stuff. Is just that it kind of like calmed down those thoughts. And I just had a conversation with a friend last night about the same thing, and they was like, yeah, it's a like we all self medicate to an extent, just to take our mind off things. Like we feeling depression is to take your mind off it. But if it's anxiety, it's just more so to kind of like calm the anxiety a bit. You get what I'm saying?
Yeah. So what I'm hearing you say is that it's like a like you said, it takes the edge off. It's something that you can do to um, help you to maneuver through whatever that difficult situation is. Because we do know that anxiety, for those of you, and these are real issues, for those of you who've never experienced it, and we all have experienced it, we may not be aware of it, but the anxiety can be debilitating.
Mm-hmm.
See a little kid and they have this phobia of a cartoon character, and when they see it, they draw back or they scream, they yell. Those are signs of that anxiety that they're experiencing. So I know, that was the part, folks who are exploring different avenues of how to deal with their anxiety or stress do sometimes um, dabble in substances, and marijuana seems to be having a major comeback now, where folks are using that more and more. It's almost like when my parents were younger, they would be more into drinking. People in their age range would be more into drinking, and so they call that liquid courage. And I
Mm-hmm.
and I call this era now that we're in smoke courage, because it's like folks they're vaping or they're smoking
Mm-hmm.
and that sort of thing. And what happens is you're relying on a substance
Mm-hmm.
to really soothe you,
Mm-hmm.
calm you down, so that you can function.
Mm-hmm.
And it seems to be the standard now. I mean, we see it on all of the social media, we see it on television, we hear it in the lyrics of the music that some of us listen to, and it's just like that is the go-to. We have signs and symbols of people. Snoop Dogg, what
Yeah.
his brand represents.
Yeah.
Now you have Mike Tyson with a whole other brand that represents the same thing. It was
Wiz
known as a
Khalifa.
boxer. Yeah, and Wiz Khalifa.
Like Wiz
Those people.
Khalifa was that was I'm gonna be honest, that was a whole movement. When
Really?
Wiz, yeah, cause Wiz Wiz Khalifa, he had a mixtape, Cushion OJ, and I remember, I think it was like 2010, that summer of 20 going into 2010, 2009, 2010. That was a whole like vibe, and his whole Cushion OJ. So like when I think about like when I first started smoking again and stuff like that, that was me coming out of football, um, and just letting myself go. I felt like I was like uptight, and I think we talked about this offline. Like I just felt that like I was always the uptight person, and then I had dealt with some adversity with football was coming to an end, and I just didn't know how to deal with it. And at that time, I didn't even know how to talk about it or who to talk to. And so all everybody around me was smoking, to be honest. Um,
Mm-hmm.
and it was like, all right, maybe I need to just do this one time to knock the edge off a little bit, maybe calm down, be like the boys or whatever. And I did it. And you know, I think about it now, it was like maybe that wasn't the thing to do, because now I'm like kind of like slowing down off it, and you know, um,
So
but that's how I dealt with it.
what made you change your mind about using marijuana now? What was it that made you want to do something different?
Well, I had been for years now. I had been going in and out, and it was always like this voice in the back of my head, like you don't need none of this, you don't need none of this. You know what I'm saying? And that voice in the back of my head, that conscience was like just at me, like, this ain't you. You don't need it, and it just was like so persistent and consistent, and then to the point where like I was getting anxiety just by smoking. You know what I mean? Like trying to fit
So
it
it wasn't
in
helping
between
anymore.
time, and it wasn't. Huh? Say it again.
It wasn't helping anymore. Like
Yeah,
it.
it wasn't helping no more. And it was kind of like counterproductive, and I started to witness that a bit, and I was like, I'm a firm believer of like if you want to make a change, sometimes you got to make drastic changes, and there's things you don't want to do, or you think that you need that you don't need, and I just kind of like took inventory of myself, and I just was like, you know what, and my friend, he came to me, one of my good friends, good childhood friends, came to me. And he was like, I remember when you was in tip top shape, you was playing ball, you was doing this, you was doing that, always in good spirits. And what happened? And when he asked me what happened, it kind of like had me shook for a minute. And then I started to think about all the things I was going through at the time, and I was like, I chose drugs as like the way to self medicate instead of talking it out. You know what I'm saying? Or going to seek help. I stopped exercising. I stopped doing a lot of different things, and that's what basically opened my mind up to wanting to do more exercise daily, um, amongst other things
So I want
that
to
I've
say
been
this to
starting.
you. I want to say this to you, and I have to say it. Just like last week, you have a tremendous amount of insight.
Mm-hmm.
You know, for you to recognize or take stock and say, okay, what am I doing, and how is what I'm doing? How is it affecting me? You know, what are the long term effects? What are the short term effects? But how is it affecting me overall? And do I need this? Is this my crutch that I need to, to make it through, or do I have enough within me to to address the issues that I'm dealing with?
And
And so
financial
when
was
I
another thing too.
well, financial is definitely a big part of it, right?
you know.
But the finances alone, I mean, is not it, because you had the
Mm-hmm.
insight to really
Mm-hmm.
evaluate.
Mm-hmm.
And so again, we want to really promote wellness and on Wellness Wednesdays and talk about this. So we talked about, some of the challenges that folks are facing with, just some of the just life issues that we're dealing with. And then that compounded with, trying to self-medicate to try to go over, to try to deal with the life issues. But now you have another issue on top of life issues that you have to deal with once you start self-medicating. But then you had the wherewithal, the wherewithal to start thinking about, okay, what do I need to do differently within myself to make some changes? Because you really are looking for that path to wellness. And what you just shared with our audience is that, once you did that self-evaluation and you came up with it, wasn't an easy thing, but you
No.
started weighing, off of, smoking the marijuana or what have you. Now, talk to us about and just reinforce with us about those things that you think that helps you after once you take something away, you have to replace it with something.
Mm-hmm.
So if I take away some sort of self-medicating thing that was not totally good for me, but I took that away, and now I don't have anything in that space. I have to replace it with something. Tell us about what you replaced, you're using marijuana with, in order to really address some of the anxiety and stress. And is this something that you would recommend for others to do if they're dealing with anxiety and stress or depression? Talk
Yeah.
to us about that.
Um, One of the things that people have been trying to get me to do was meditate. Um, and I used to feel like the weed was when I meditate. When I smoked, that was like a meditation to me. And then I was like, you know what? I don't need it in order to meditate, so to speak, because that was my time away from time to kind of like get my thoughts together. And some of the things I started to do since then is like I work out every morning. Like even if it's just 100 push-ups, 100 sit-ups. One of the things I started doing early, even when I was still smoking, was I would just take these walks around the neighborhood. That was one of the that was a freeing thing to do. And I know some people who are in the streets can't do that, but that was one thing that like I could do, that I knew I could just get away. I could walk, and I could just, and it was just a meditation just by walking the whole neighborhood. No matter how, and you got to see certain things. So like when I walk my neighborhood, you know, I see a man sleeping outside the church, and I just think about my situation. It could be worse. So I see the man on the corner, another man on the corner, asking for a piece of change, and I may have 50 some change in my pocket, and it just gave me a bit of perspective on life in general. And so that's what made that was some of the things. I tried comedic yoga this week. Um,
Oh, how was that?
Comedic, it was on YouTube, but it was actually it was good because you get the when you start to control, and I knew this during playing ball, like control your breathing while working out. But when you control your breathing, you kind of slow yourself down a bit, the way you can just be with yourself, and that helped me a lot. It was an hour and a half. I usually only want to work out for about 30, 45 minutes, but I took an hour and a half on YouTube. I forget the dude's name, and I just sat there and I did that, and that was real good. That was real
So
good.
let's talk about that for a minute, because that's one of those things that you can do. You just described several things, just going out, communing with the environment, whether you be out in your backyard or your front yard, getting some of that sun, getting those vitamin D rays or what have you, and then doing some mindfulness or meditation type of exercises that can really, really, really reduce the level of anxiety. And that's one of the things, for those of you all are listening, that we have at our community events. Speaking of the community event, we're having a community event at Demps Park this Saturday. It's in session, and we encourage you to come on out if you can to Demps Park this Saturday from 12 to 3. The information is there. Or if you don't see it on the screen, you can go to the website below, and it will be posted on the website as well. So one of the things we also have at our wellness events is yoga. We have some yoga experts that come out. They teach breathing techniques that are extremely helpful in terms of de-stressing or dealing with the anxiety. It also gives you another area of focus. And I think that one of the things, to me, Munch, I want to share with you, that keeps us stressed out, that keeps us with high anxiety, is that we have so many distractions available to us now. I remember as a young kid, you know, we had, you know, a very young kid, we only had like 6 channels on TV. Now you got 300 and 400 channels on television. And then you have all of these music outlets that you can listen to. It's like it's hard for you to even spend time with yourself because there's always a constant distraction around you. And so that in and of itself can create more anxiety or create more stress, because if you're listening to something where you're constantly getting bad news, if you're listening to the news and hearing about the wars that are going on. You're hearing about the financial industry that's going on. You're hearing about the job situation or the housing situation. Before you even get out of bed, if you're in the bed watching television in the morning, that's something that can create a lot of stress. So one of the things is finding that technique, that tool to really help you to de-stress. So I'm glad you talked about this kinetic yoga. I'm glad you talked about, just going out and just getting and mobilizing, getting active, making your body move, get those endorphins flowing, get that blood flowing and really put yourself in a better state. So those things I think are very essential to the whole process. So Munch, I'm gonna let you say some last words before we wrap up. Is there something else you want to add?
Not too much. It's
Did we have
it's
any questions from the audience or anything?
let me see. Let me see what we got. Cause
All right,
I
while you're looking, I'm just going to say again to thank you all for coming out to Wellness Wednesdays. We want to encourage you to go to the website, mymentalhealthmiami.com, take the survey. The survey link is in the right-hand corner. After you get your survey and you receive your scorecard, learn your score, know your score. The scorecard will tell you whether you're high in areas of anxiety, stress, or depression, and levels of support. Contact the care coordination team at this number, 786-433-8487. All of that is down in the crawl below. And they will guide you. They'll do a brief interview, find out what your needs are. It doesn't have to be on the mental health side. You can have environmental needs. You can have needs in terms of employment opportunity, in terms of um, food, or in terms of housing, or whatever needs you may have. They'll direct you to the resources that are available for you. And most of them, a lot of them are free or on a scaling, on a sliding scale fee for you. Did you see anything much? Any
no,
questions or
I
anything?
didn't see anything.
Okay. All right. So I want to thank you much again for joining us this week. Next week, we're going to have a very special guest with you to come out today. We may have two guests that will come out, speak about issues related to men's health and wellness. And then we want to make sure that you stay in touch. Again, we encourage you to come on out to Demps Park on Saturday. Demps Park, put the flyer back up, Munch, so you can see the address. It's from 12 to 3. We'll be having lively discussion there. We'll also be providing a very nice cooked barbecue meal. It's going to be like a picnic, the meal that you have, that you can have soul food, food for the soul. And then we'll also have some other activities, youth, and we'll have some, um, of our partners to have information for any of you adults that want uh, information around anything dealing with mental health and wellness. So we thank you for coming out. Again, Demps Park is at 1350 Southwest 216th Street, Miami, Florida. This is in honor of Men's Health Month, and it's also in honor of Juneteenth. We will have the yoga and mindfulness training. So those of you who've never had that opportunity, you can get it free at this event. If you just want to check it out, if there's something that you want to do differently, something you never tried before, this would be a great opportunity for you to come on out and join us at Demps Park this Saturday, June 18th, for a pre-Father's Day celebration, a, a Juneteenth celebration, and also Men's Health and Wellness celebration. Thank you all for joining us this evening. We hope that you have a wonderful day. And remember us on Wellness Wednesdays. Every Wednesday at 7 p.m., we'll be here having lively discussions. We're honoring men this month, so we're talking about men, but we won't always be talking about just men. We'll be opening the floor to other topics of discussion. Thank you all. Have a good night.